Good morning. I am sure that many of you are very familiar with that clip. It's probably one of the most famous baseball clips around. Baseball is absolutely my favorite game to watch. And baseball fans know that really baseball is a thinking man's game. It's full of split-second decisions that everybody has to make, that the manager has to make. It's a very strategic game. It's said during a Major League Baseball game, a manager can make up to 3,000 different game time decisions during a game. Speaking about decisions, the next time that you're thinking about making a life decisions, I want you to ask yourself this question: who's on first? Because I believe that's probably one of the most important decisions that we could make, or we could ask ourselves, is the question of who's on first in our lives. I want you to turn your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 3 with me. We're going to be looking at verses 9 and 10 in just a little bit. But before we do that, see, the one thing about baseball that's different from soccer and is different from basketball and is different from football is the positions. I know that every team has positions, but in soccer, they run all around. Everyone runs the entire field, and so sometimes you don't know who's playing what position. Especially in basketball, there's really no actual thing as positions anymore in basketball. They've got 7-footers putting up 3-foot jumpers, and they've got 6-foot guards that are going right into the lane. So there's really no positions anymore in basketball. Football, there's positions, but still, they run all over the field. But in basketball, it's a little bit different. Everyone has their positions, and everyone kind of stay pretty much in their own position. You've got the pitcher who stays around the mound, and that's where he generally kind of plays. The same thing with the third baseman and the shortstop, and so on and so forth. But positions are so important. See, a coach knows that in a winning team, the formula is putting the right people in the right positions, and that's how you win in life. My question is, where does God play in your life? What positions does God play in your life? Let's look at Proverbs chapter 3. Honor your mother, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of your crops. Here's my translation. Put God first in everything that you have, in everything that you do. And if we do that, here's what God says the results will be. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. He said in your life, I will bless you if you make this one simple decision. Put God on first. Now, there's several different options. There's several different things that are competing in our lives with putting God on first, isn't there? So let's look at some of these options on who we can put on first in our lives. Number one, we can put ourselves on first, right? In fact, that's for most of us, our nature is ourselves. We want to put ourselves on first because we think about us first. Then who else could we put on first? Well, we could put our spouse, or girlfriend, or boyfriend on first. But the reality is neither one of them or none of us has the ability or the capability of playing first. We could put our jobs on first. We could put our family on first. But the most important question is who's on first when it comes to the lives that we live every single day. I want to ask you, is God first in your life today? Are you putting him on first? Or are you ready to put him on first in your life today? Psalms 50, verses 7 through 10, the psalmist writes for God, and he says, "Listen, my people, and I will speak. I will testify against you, Israel. I am God, your God. And that's God's way of saying, I have to be on first, and you can't be. I'm the only one that's able to be on first. Now, I don't know what's the hardest thing for you when it comes to putting God on first. I don't know if it's your job. I don't know if it's your friends. I don't know if it's your spouse. I don't know if it's even your ability just to forgive. But the hardest thing for you to do, to put God on first, I want you to think about that. See, when we put God on first, what God says is, I will take care of you. If you are willing to put me first, if you are willing to make me a priority, I will take care of you. I will make sure, again, what does this say? That your barns will be overflowing and your vats will be filled, will brim over with new wine. So how do we do that, people? How do we do that, church? How do we put God on first every single time with our time, with our energy, with our finances, with the decisions that we make about everything in life? How do we do that? I want to make 3 suggestions to you real quick. Number 1, we've got to trust the one on first has me covered. Now, during a baseball game, you see a pitcher will glance over at the first baseman several times during that bat. He wants to make sure that that first baseman has first base covered in case he wants to throw the runner out on first. Because the most dangerous runner is really the runner on first. And he wants to make sure that when he is ready, that the runner's ready, that he can throw the runner out. When's the last time that you went to God in prayer and he's not there? When's the last time when you glance over at God and he says, sorry, I'm not here right now. Leave me a message and I'll call you back and I'll get back with you. Aren't you glad that God, we have never have to wait for a reply text from God? Often it's the very opposite. Often it's God that is there waiting for us to glance over. Often it's God waiting for us to give him a call. Often it's God waiting for us to return his texts and his calls. I want to give you some examples of some people that I believe is trusting in God, and they know who's on first, and they know that he's got them covered. A couple of weeks ago, Aubrey Day was baptized at camp, and it was a great honor for me to be able to baptize her. But Aubrey's been thinking about this decision for many months now. And part of this journey for her in deciding that I want to put God on first is that she realized that there were people and friends in her life that were a negative influence on her. And if she was going to put God on first and make him the number one thing in her life, there's a decision that she has to make. So she knew that she had to back away from some of these negative influences. And so that's what Aubrey decided to do. By putting God on first, she decided, I'm going to back away from some of the friends and some of the negative influences that I have. Now, she's still friends with some of these people because she wants to be a positive influence on them. But she trusted that God has her covered if she's willing to put him on first. We just got back from really an amazing mission trip in Nicaragua. And on August the 20th, I want to invite you to this. On August the 20th, that Sunday night, our mission team will be giving and sharing with you their mission experience in Nicaragua. You're going to be hearing about stories of what they experienced, the work that they did, what God has done in their lives, what God taught them. And I want to invite you to that. 6 o'clock on August the 20th. And it's going to be, I believe, a blessing because so many people here have been praying, were praying for that trip for us. And so many people in this room supported us in going on that trip. So I want to invite you to that. But we met, and I don't want to give too much away, but we met this lady named Lucia. And She was one of the most incredible women I've ever met, and we just spent 4 or 5 days with her. And when I say Lucia had nothing, I literally mean she had nothing. There is American poverty, and Lucia is about 5 or 6 levels under that. But we were our mission team ended up building her an outside bathroom. She didn't have a bathroom before that. And during this week, Lucia worked side by side with us, did whatever she could to kind of help our team work. Not only that, but this lady who literally had nothing, she cooked for the team every single day. She cooked for the rich Americans who could really afford anything they wanted to afford. She cooked for us every single day. See, she lived by putting God on first and knowing God's going to have me covered, even though she didn't have the money to cook for 8 people every single day. Now, I think it would be very appropriate for Lucia to think of some things. Some what-ifs stuff. What if something would happen stuff. I can't afford to feed this many people every single day. I can barely afford that. I don't even have enough money for myself and my son, much less to feed 8 people every day. What if something should happen? What if I don't get the job because she cleaned houses? What if I lose my job? What if it was the rainy season while we were there? What if it rains and the rain just washes out my house? What if? Can you identify with those questions? I think we all can. The what if something should happen. God, if I'm going to put you on first, but what if? Well, I think God kind of Jesus answers that question, the what if something happens, in Matthew 6, verse 33. See, if we trust God and step out in faith with our time, if we trust God and step out in faith and put Him on first with our decisions, with our finances, God says, this is what I am going to do. And in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus is teaching His disciples, and He's also teaching His followers about worry, about what it means to trust God, that He's got them covered, and that He will take care of them, their daily needs, if they will put Him on first. And He says, but seek first the kingdom, His kingdom, and His righteousness, and all these things. Well, what things is Jesus saying right here? What are the things that He's talking about? What He's talking about are our daily needs, right? He's talking about the things that God will provide us if we will trust Him to do what we want to do, the things that He wants us to do, to sustain ourselves, to live, to do ministry like we do here at this church. That's all these things will be given unto you as well. Man, how do we do with doing that? How do we do at seeking His kingdom when? First. Do I give God the first fruit of everything that I have, of who I am, and seek after Him? Or do I have other lower G gods in my life? Number 2. First is you trust God, you trust the one on first that has you covered. And the second thing is you know the one on first owns first place. See, we trust Him, we recognize Him, and He's the one that owns everything in the first place, right? Psalms 21, verse 4. The earth and everything on it belongs to the Lord. The Lord and all His people, the world and all its people belong to the Lord. This is David, and he's talking to the Israelites, and he says he is exclaiming the sovereignty of God. Because why? Because God owns everything, and God created everything. That's what David is saying to his people. And also remember Psalms 50, where it says God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and He owns all the animals in the forest. So everything that we have, the job that you have, Where do you think it comes from? God. But hi, I went to school. I took, I worked hard. I studied hard. Like Walter right here. He has a doctorate. Did y'all know that? But Walter knows where his job comes from. Walter knows where his intelligence comes from. Right? God owns everything. And what we have, even if we think we worked hard for it, even if we think we earn it, was it not God that provided those things for us? So God owns everything anyway. Now we, especially in the United States, I believe, suffers what Dave Ramsey called the tight-fistedness. See, Dave Ramsey says that the myth is that if you want more, then you got to hold on to what you have. I want you to take out your hand. Come on, y'all can do it. Everyone take out your hand. And I want you to make a fist. And I want you to hold really tight. Squeeze really, really tight. Like you're holding on to something that you never want to let go. Did everybody got to hold on tight? See, right now, if I wanted to give you something, I couldn't do it. Because you're so focused on holding on tight that I could not give you something. I want you to try this. Open your hand up. See, God is asking us, and He's commanding us to live our lives open-handed. Open-handed with our time, open-handed with our energy, open-handed with our decisions, and open-handed with our finances. That is so hard to do, isn't it? To say, God, I give everything to you. Why? Because you own everything anyway. Not me, not my job, not what I've accumulated, but you own everything anyway. See, if we live with open hand with our compassion, if we live with open hand with our love, if we live open-handed with everything that we have, God says, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure you have what you need. We might not get everything we want, but I'm going to make sure you have what you need to do what I want you to do. Now, many of you know that we had to fundraise for our Nicaragua mission trip. And I talked to 3 or 4 people about helping sponsor one of the kids. And so I talked to this couple, and they don't know the church. I mean, they don't know the youth group very well, and the youth group don't know them very well. And they agreed to help support one of the kids to do that. And so the next week, I met them out in the church parking lot, and they hand me a check. And I just quickly glanced at the check, and it was a $1,500 check. I was amazed, blown away, to tell you the truth. And I thanked them for their generosity. And the husband said to me, this is not for me. It's from my wife. This is from the money that she earned from her job. See, when we live open-handed, knowing that God owns everything anyway, it's so much easier for us to share and to love and to help when our God gives us the opportunity to help, isn't it? And then number 3, when we live like the one on first comes first. See, when I say put him on first, what I mean is we put him on first with our finances, we put him on first with our time, and we put him on first with our choices. We give him the first fruit. That's what Leviticus said. Look at Leviticus 23:10 with me. It says, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you and reap its harvest. What is God doing there? He's providing for his people. I will give you this land that I promised you. And not only that, when you get in there, there's going to be so great. You're going to have so much. But when you do that, when you enter this land, when you reap the benefits that I've given you, here's what I want you to do. I want you to bring to the priest a sheaf of the first grain of the harvest. That means first things first to God. It takes focus and it takes discipline for us to put God on first. For us to know that God owns everything and to give him the first fruit of everything that we have and who we are. I'm not standing up here to tell you that I have it all together, because I don't. I struggle, from what I think that most of us do, with the idea of putting God on first with everything. What do you mean everything, God? I treasure my time, God. I don't have a lot of it. But you want me to give that to you first? That's difficult to do. I work very hard at my job, God. I work very hard to get to the position that I'm at. You mean you want me to give you my first when it even comes to my job? God, that pie only is so big that I have. And you want me to give you the first part of that pie? It's difficult. But our God is saying, I will bless you when you choose to put me on first. The question again is, who's on first? I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge you to decide if God is not God on first in your life. It's to put him first in your life. That means today. That means he called the shots. That means that he's the one that directs. That means that he's the priority. Today's the first day of the week. And we gather here today, and we're going to give God our first. The first dime I get, I'm going to make sure I'm going to put God on first. When it comes to decisions that I'm making for my family, I want to make sure God is first in that. In the time that I spend, what I choose to do, then I want to make sure that God is first with that. I was talking to a friend of mine this week, and he was sharing with me how his health insurance for his family is going to go up about $6,000 to $8,000 for the next 2 years. That's a huge chunk of money, isn't it? It would worry me. I don't know about you. But what my friend shared with me next was really profound, maybe even God-inspired. He said, my family is not going to live in fear and worry for the next 2 years. We're just not going to do that. We want to enjoy the life that God has given us. We want to continue to follow what God is doing in our lives. We want to continue blessing others with what God has given us. Man, that's powerful stuff right there. And he also said to me, we're not going to cut back on our giving. We're not going to cut back on when God gives us an opportunity to serve someone and to help others, we're not going to stop doing that. We're going to continue to do what God's asking us to do, and he's not even going to try even to make up the money somewhere else in order to make up that $6,000 or $8,000. And he's not going to. I'm not cutting back on any time that it would take to serve and love others because I need to make up this $6,000 or $8,000. I want to live like that, don't you? We all should be living like that. Abraham is an interesting character in the Bible for me. He sometimes frustrates God probably to the nth degree. But then he sometimes is a pillar of who we need to be as God's followers. The Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, God calls Abraham to pick up everything he has and just to move to the land where I will show you. Now, I want you to think about that. Abraham had a lot, didn't he? He had flocks, he had cattle, he had property, he had a whole clan of people that he was taking care of. And God just comes to him one day and just says, I want you to pick up and move, Abraham. Where are we going, God? I'll let you know when you get there. So he goes home, and he shares with his entire clan. He goes, we got to move. Where are we going? I don't know. Neighbor's asking him, why are you packing? I'm moving. Where are you going? Not sure yet. But he gets up because he trusts God. He knows God's got him covered. He knows God has given him all the blessings that he has. And he's willing to give God the first fruits of everything he does. So he picks up his whole clan and moves, and God is able to do some amazing things through Abraham. Now, one of the things that I really would love is that if I could make the decision to put God on first, and that be the permanent decision, I don't have to decide that anymore. Kind of like baptism. You know, when we put God on baptism, it is a once and only thing. You don't have to do it again every single day. If you're not baptized today, I want to challenge you to think about putting God on first today. I want to challenge you to decide that He is your everything and that you want Him to direct your life. You want Him to lead you for the rest of your life. But for those of us who've already committed their life to Christ, we know that putting God on first is an everyday decision, isn't it? You have to get up every single day and say to yourself and decide in your heart, today I'm going to put God on first in everything that I do. From my speech to the way I live to what I do with my finances, we have to do that every single day. And that's what God has called us to do. Because we know, we trust Him, He's got us covered because He owns everything. And when we give Him the first fruit, He will bless our lives. Now, in a little bit, we're going to be singing our invitation song. If you want to put God on first today, I want to ask you to come forward as we sing. But maybe, God, you've been a Christian for a while now, and God's not on first right now in your life. It might be your job. It might be your family. It might be material things. But maybe you need to come up and ask the congregation for prayers and ask the congregation to help you by making you accountable on putting God on first. Maybe it means that you might have to have a sit down with your family within the next week and decide as a family, how are we going to put God on first in our family so that others will know? You see, because the way we live, the decisions that we make, not only with our time, but our finances, tells those around us who's on first in our lives, doesn't it? And if we want to make God first in our lives, especially within our families, we might have to change the way we live, and we might have to change the way we give. So if there's anything that this family, our shepherds, our ministry staff, our family can help you with, please come forward as we stand and we sing. Oh.